Hello, distance learners. Hope you guys enjoyed your day off. We're going to go ahead and finish our notes today. So you need to have out this government systems chart that you guys did a few days ago, and we're going to go ahead and finish up the rest of that work. So based on the lecture that we had before, we finished on fascism and dictatorship, so now we're going to head into autocracy. So here's what you need to write down. Go ahead and pause the video and type this into your explain. Now with autocracy, the most important thing about this is you have one single supreme ruler. So this is typically either a monarch or in a theocracy, some sort of a religious leader. Now oftentimes when you think of autocracy, the very first thing that you're going to think of is England, which would be incorrect. The reason why is because in England, it's not 100% control. It's actually more control in an elected body. So instead, in this case, what you're going to be looking for is you're going to be looking for somebody with absolute power. So your best example, so heading into your example section, is going to be Saudi Arabia for the monarch. And one of the things about autocracies too is it also includes theocracies. And what I mean by theocracies is that powered by the church, and so the example for that would be the Vatican City. So the positive of this is that in an autocracy, you're going to have consistent, unchanging power, so it never changes. But your con is there is no ability to change your government. So go ahead and pause that, make sure you have all of that chart down. The next one we're going to do is constitutional monarchy. Go ahead and pause the video and type this down. So with a constitutional monarchy, this is what you think of when you think of England. So the best example of this would be England, UK technically. And in a constitutional monarchy, you have a monarch, so in this case the king or the queen. However, they do not have absolute power. It's more of an elected official position. And so in this case, when we look at the constitutional monarchy with the king and queen of England, you're looking at the fact that the queen does not have a lot of power. It's actually really rested in the elected officials. They really don't have any power at all. And so your pro of this is that power rests in an elected body, but your con is that a lot of money is spent on rulers who don't actually have power in the government. Now an oligarchy is the next one. So if you want to go ahead and switch to oligarchy. So oligarchy means power of the few by the few, and it was really popular in ancient times, but the most popular example today, so your example is Iran, I-R-A-N. And basically what you need to know about this is that you're going to have a really small group that's going to lead the government. However, that small group also tends to be the most wealthy. So your positive is that you have multiple people ruling your country, but the negative of that is that typically all power is held in the wealthy class. Your next example is going to be representative democracy. So in representative democracy, this is going to be just like the United States. It is the United States. We are not a true democracy, direct democracy. We are a representative. And what this means, if you want to go ahead and pause it and type this down, is what this means is, what do you need?
I was just going to do setting up a time for my test.
When are you going to take it?
I was wondering if I could on Friday.
I'm not here on Friday. I could do, if you can only come on a Friday, I'm here next Friday, but I'm not here on Friday.
I could do like after school on Thursday.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, take it.
Yeah. My apologies. Okay, so in a representative democracy, what you're going to find is you have an elected body that actually holds all the power, just like the United States. So we elect the president, but the president doesn't actually have a lot of power. It's split between various elected bodies. One important thing to note, though, about representative democracy is that you don't have direct power. So, for example, let's pretend that there's some sort of a drug control law or something like that. In those cases, you have elected somebody to vote for you, and you cannot directly influence that legislation. So the pro of this is that an elected body is in power, but the con of this is that you don't have direct power to make decisions. You elect a representative who does that power. Then you're going to have direct democracy. So in direct democracy, this is a form of democracy in which people decide on policy initiative directly. So the best example of this today is Switzerland. And what I mean by this is that you get to influence any individual law, you get to help suggest law, you make direct decisions for that law in a direct democracy. The pro of this is that you have a say in your government. But the con of this is that not everyone participates. And what I mean by that is that's similar to today, but it only works if everybody participates. So for example, let's pretend they passed some sort of a gun control law, but only 10% of people voted. In that case, you're not representing the full amount. So in a direct democracy, it works great if everybody participates, but if you don't participate, that's when the negative is going to come out. Okay, so our next one is going to be socialism. So in socialism, everybody in theory is the same. So go ahead and pause this and type this. So in these, you're going to have, in theory, the most freedom because you get to choose what you want and make those decisions. Actually, that's in direct democracy, excuse me. In socialism, though, it's everything is, in theory, going to be equal. So basically, the idea is that everybody's going to come together in the economy and work towards a better good. The example of this, so socialism is a little bit weird, because there's only like 17 countries that technically declare themselves a socialist in terms of government. There are several parts of different governments that have socialist economy ideas, but not a true socialism. So we are just going to list a couple of them that are official. So Cuba, for example, officially declares themselves socialist. Laos, Laos, officially declares themselves. So the pro of this is that there is no rich and poor, everyone's the same. But the con of this tends to be higher taxes and possibilities of inequality. And this is normally, though, when socialism goes bad with corruption. Which is not necessarily that it's always corrupted, it's just that's a negative of a possibility. The last one, if you want to go ahead and pause, is communism. And all you have to write down in communism for the explain is it's the same thing as socialism, but with a government that acts totalitarian. So same thing as socialism with a government that acts totalitarian. And so for your examples, I'm not going to have you put an example because it really, really depends on who's saying it, what historian's saying it, different things like that. And for your pros is that, again, in theory, everything's the same, but a negative is high likelihood of fear, danger, things like that. Now, on your guys' day by day, you need to go ahead. There's a thing that says econ chart. Looks like this. Go ahead and pull it up. And we're going to go ahead and quickly fill this in. So I've given you blanks, so just go ahead and fill in the blanks as we go. And then we'll do our assessment. Maybe. Okay, there it is. I found it. Maybe. All my stuff is mixed up. My apologies. Okay. Here it is. All right. So let's start with traditional. So this is also known as subsistence. So S-U-B, S-I-S-T-E-N-C-E. The examples of this are going to be smaller areas of China, India, Russia, and small villages. For your blanks, make what you need to survive. Basic needs are met within the home or village. The government doesn't have much of a role. And if you're struggling to keep up, you can always pause, and that would be fine. Who decided who gets what? Individuals decide what they need and can produce. Okay, how is distribution decided? He who grew it or made it gets it. Some items are shared within the village. Surplus may be sold locally. So in a subsistence farming environment or in a traditional village environment, everything's about survival. You make enough to survive, you help each other survive, possibly, but it's really just about survival. In a market economy, also known as capitalism, your examples are the United States, England, and Japan. for your blanks. Private industry and individuals make the goods for those that can't afford it. This is everything. There is no government regulation. Law of supply, so who decides who gets what? Law of supply and demand. Individuals determine what to produce based on what they think they can sell. And how do you decide distribution? If you can afford it, you can get it. So in capitalism, it's all about, in a lot of these societies, in a market economy, it's about making and selling. If you have enough money, you're able to get it. You create it based on supply and demand. And the idea of supply and demand is if supply is really high and demand is low, you're not going to produce an item. I gave the example today in class of the Zune. The Zune was an MP3 player that was supposed to be able to compete with the iPod. And nobody bought it. And so there was a high supply, low demand, and it went out of business. In contrast with COVID, you have a whole lot of things that are very low supply, super high demand, and prices could possibly go up, or that's a really popular item to be able to get. And you're still seeing that today with like Clorox and cleaning supplies is really, really hard to be able to get. A mixed economy, and one thing I want to note, by the way, is if I label something as a mixed economy, that doesn't necessarily mean it is a mixed economy or is capitalism. It depends on the economist that you're going to talk to. So in a mixed economy, it's also known as socialism. The official mixed economies that actually say that they're official is India, Tanzania, and Angola. And one thing to note is that many countries do not officially declare themselves socialist, even though they might have some socialist ideologies. How it is decided of what to produce. The state owns and runs some basic areas and industry. The rest is individually controlled and run based on supply and demand. There is some government regulation on prices. Who decides who gets what? Some individual freedoms and some government controls. Government is monitored by voting. How do they decide the distribution? Individuals and governments work together. Basic needs are paid for by the government through taxes. The rest is up to individuals based on supply and demand. So in a mixed economy, you have a capitalist society, but instead of having everything be supply and demand, the government might control some prices, the government might control some supply, there might be some private businesses. It all depends on the individual industry. The last one is a command economy, and that is going to be communism. Notice that we use both the words socialism and communism, and that's because communism and socialism are both government styles and economic styles. Your examples are Cuba and North Korea. How it is decided? Industry is controlled by the central government, and all economic decisions are made by the government, including prices. Who decides who gets what? Low level of individual freedoms and choices, all centrally determined. How the distribution is decided? Distributes based on perceived needs and determined by the central government with the goal of everything being equal. So again, in a true communist society, you want everything to remain 100% equal. So now what you're going to do is you are going to explore this a little more by starting your assessment for the day. And I put it somewhere, so let me find it real quick. So let me explain what you're going to do for this assessment. So in this assessment, again, if you open up the day by day, okay, so it looks like this. Go ahead and open up the assessment, file and make a copy. And you're going to have 2 days to do this. So this is going to be today's activity and next class's activity. What you're going to do is you're going to select 3 scenarios from the list below. You're then going to put this into the scenario boxes, 1, 2, and 3. And I don't really care if you want to copy and paste it or you can just name it. It really doesn't matter to me. Then what you're going to do is you're going to pick 2 different government types from this chart, and you're going to put it into the 2 different government styles. Now, some of these scenarios lend really well to certain government styles. Some of them might be a little bit more difficult. You're going to paste what the definition is from class, and then you're going to think, how would this government handle the situation? Now, I don't want you to be broad. I don't want you to just put, like in the tsunami, they would save people. Think about your government itself and how the government would create or fix a situation based on that specific government style. So think about like constitutional monarchy. What would be the role of the king or the queen? What would be the role of the elected officials? Whatever it could possibly be. Summarize what happened, and then down here you're going to compare the 2 government responses. Now, each one needs to have a different government style for each one. So you're going to end up with 6 government styles by the end. Then to earn a 4, you're going to do the following. You're going to select 3 countries from around the world and explain their type of government and how you know this. Note that you cannot use any of the countries we discussed in class, and you must use 3 different types of government. So again, this is going to be what you're going to do over the next 2 days. Let me know if you have any questions.